One thing I've learned very early on in life is that people are always going to judge you. No matter who you are, where you come from, or where you don't come from, people are going to have an opinion about you. And judgment is always going to exist. I hate it when people say, I don't judge people. I'm like, yeah, you do, 100%. If a man is naked, running at you in the middle of the night with a knife in his hand, you're going to judge him as a crazy person, as a threat, as something that you should get away from, as something that you should defend yourself against. If you're sitting here saying, oh, I don't judge people, and then this man's running at you, like, obviously you're going to get hurt by the situation. Now, this is an obtuse example, a crazy example, but you get my point. You're going to judge somebody no matter what. If you're a waitress at a restaurant and, guys that wear polo shirts don't tip you constantly, like everybody that wears a polo just doesn't tip, you're going to eventually assume that, okay, he's wearing a polo shirt, he's not going to tip me well. But then you see guys that are wearing tank tops and they tip you very, very well. Every time you're going to assume that, okay, people with tank tops tip me. And now replace that example with skin color, race, culture, religion, height. You can get into all sorts of judgment where it can come down to racism, sexism, so on and so forth. But judgment and this ability to form judgments against people is a biological and evolutionary trait that is actually very beneficial to us. We learn to do things, we learn to avoid things, we learn to judge certain situations, and effectively in today's capitalistic social society, we learn to judge people. So judging people is actually very beneficial. Now, where it gets kind of wrong, or it gets kind of ineffective for us, is when we judge against something that could be beneficial to us. And that also is a subjective thing. See, there's people that don't like Indian people, for example. I'm an Indian guy, right? And they hate Indian people. And I feel bad for them because I'm like, man, you're missing out on all the Indian food and all the culture and all the great music we make. But that's also subjective because maybe they don't like that to begin with. Maybe they would have never liked Indian food. Maybe they have a good reason not to like Indian people. Maybe somebody in their past was an Indian guy that bullied them every day at school. Who knows? And so they formed a judgment. They formed an idea. They formed some preconception, like some preconceived notion in their head where Indian people are bad. And maybe it has led them to be beneficial in certain aspects of life, and maybe they're very satisfied with it because that's their reality. So here's the options I have in that situation. Number one, I could sit here and try to fight it. I could sit here and say, well, no, Indian people are not, I could argue with him. I could say the world is unfair. I could do some empirical study and eventually evaluate that, yes, this man is 100% racist against Indian people, but what do I have then? All I'm doing is proving his reality and his opinion, theoretically, right. His judgment, his bias, his conceived idea of Indian people in this example. So it doesn't really get me anywhere. So arguing against judgment a lot of times, trying to change someone's mind a lot of times by words, by action, or just by the protest of this is unfair and this is not right, it doesn't really work. But that's actually what a lot of people end up doing in life. People protest, people yell, people try to change things by voicing an opinion against an opinion, and then these opinions collide, and really it just becomes a combative situation because even when you're trying to say someone's wrong, you are hurting them or you are pushing them away from accepting your viewpoint in reality. Even if you're giving them logical information, sometimes people take it very offensively because the number one thing that people don't like, and this is the truth, is judgments that may have some truth. I think that's what offends us the most, where there's a judgment that someone creates, an idea that someone creates, and it's actually kind of true. See, there's an idea. There's a lot of stereotypes out there in the world. I'll talk about myself, like, Indian people are cheap, right? Or Indian people smell bad. I got that one all the time growing up. Oh, do you have a bar of soap? And I'm not gonna lie. Okay, Indian people, from my experience as an Indian man, are very cheap. Our culture values being frugal, saving money, not buying expensive materialistic things. Indian people actually spend their money, but not in ways that you may understand. They spend their money on the house, they spend their money on gold a lot of times, and they spend their money on education and investing into education and degrees and certain certificates. Like, Indian people are very big on spending money towards things that bring them some kind of studious nature. So it's not that Indian people are theoretically cheap, but I understand that idea that people have. Indian people are cheap. And so I'm not necessarily offended by it because maybe I'm taking the higher road on this one, but I do understand how it offends certain people that are Indian that I know. And then there's the other one with Indian people smell bad, right? So in my experience, once again, yeah, sometimes Indian people don't have the most, it's not necessarily that they smell bad. I feel like Indian people just expire faster. I think the comedian Russell Peters actually talked about this. He's like, Indian people just expire faster. We have a lot of hair, and our bodies are adapted to very hot climates. So we release heat and we release that a lot faster. So also the food we eat is very spicy. It's filled with a lot of, chilies and powders and stuff like that. So we also don't exercise a lot. I'm giving you a lot of empirical data here. Indian people don't exercise a lot. There's not a lot of Indian athletes outside of cricket, right? They also eat a lot of spicy food. We also like to use a lot of Ayurvedic and herbal products without chemicals. We also use a lot of oils. And in addition to that, we are adapted for hotter climates. We're very hairy. So naturally, sometimes Indian people expire faster and they smell worse. So I could sit here and get offended by that. Like genuinely, like people told me that all the time and I'm like, oh man. But I think the best thing that you can do is try to beat it, but not by opinions, just by action. So I smell good all the time. Like I don't think you're ever gonna catch me smelling bad. I smell very good, I have a big hygiene routine. I take multiple showers a day, even though I work out multiple times a day. I'm very clean. My place is very clean. My place is very organized. Now, when it comes to being cheap, I have nice things. I wouldn't say that I'm a spender or someone that flexes a lot. I live very well below my means, but also I spend money on things that are important to me. I do like to enjoy myself here and there. So I don't necessarily think I've 100% broken that, but it's not important to me that I break that. But the one that was, you smell bad, that would potentially offend me, I've changed that with action. And here's the thing. Someone might have a bias towards me. There's many women I've met that are like, you are the best smelling brown guy I've ever been with. You are like the most articulate brown guy I've ever seen. A lot of different things. And it's because I've broken the stereotype. I broke out of the judgment, the bias. And here's the thing, when you break out of it, you actually get more attention and you get more praise and people pay attention to you a little bit more. Like if you're a young guy, like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old making $1 million, it's much more impressive than somebody that's, a little bit older making that. I remember when I first got into business, people didn't take me seriously, which is why I bought the car I have. Not because I needed it. I don't really care about my nicer cars, but I got that car because people would respect me a little bit more. When I pulled up to a meeting with a guy that was 50 years old in business, he would only judge me by the way I looked. You're really young to be in this position, to have this meeting, to be here. But when he sees the car that I'm pulling up in and the way I carry myself and the way I'm physically built and the clothing I wear, he says, okay, this guy's got a little bit of style. He's built very well. He takes care of himself and he's driving a really expensive car. Something might make sense here. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. People are very big on judgment. And the best way to break that, to rebel against that, to destroy that judgment is by just simply pursuing the course of excellence to the highest levels and by displaying yourself in the most professional manner to break that. So the stereotype is Indian people smell bad. I smell good. The stereotype is you're so young, you shouldn't be in this position. I show up having nicer things than you, looking better than you, more organized. The stereotypes is, tons of different areas. I could go on and on and on about things in my life, like my Rottweiler, for example. Oh, these dogs are dangerous. These dogs bite. These dogs are very vicious. They're uncontrolled. My dog is trained to a T where I walk him downtown without a leash, and he stays right by my side. I overdo, and you know what that gets me? That gets me more attention. That gets me more praise. Honestly, I'm glad. It's actually the best thing when someone's judging you. When someone is judging you in your position for whatever it is, and you feel like it's hurting you, just do the opposite. Just beat it. Beat the judgment. Prove to them that it's not true. And you'll actually get a better result overall. So people are fascinated. Sometimes, literally, one of the girls I know, she's an acquaintance of mine, and she'll introduce me when she meets people oh, this is Sumi. He smells amazing, by the way. He's always smelling good. He's always put together. And he literally changed my mind about Indian people. And there's a lot of girls I've talked to where they've never gone with a brown guy or an Indian guy because they're boring, they're just not as fun, so on and so forth. And I'm over here trying to win it date by date by date for the brown culture. And sometimes you got to play that position. There's also good judgments that you get no matter what in life. You may just not be realizing them. You also have an area in your life where you have proper judgments, on my floor where I live in the penthouse, like if there's a black person on my floor, for example, some people may assume that, oh, he's an athlete. He is a young guy, right? And that's a judgment that people cast, But for me, as an Indian guy, they assume that I'm a doctor. Like many of my neighbors asked, oh, are you are you a surgeon? Are you a doctor, right? And I'm like, no, I'm an entrepreneur. And they completely like look aside, like, oh, okay, what do you do? And I tell them like, hey, I'm in coaching, and I'm in a business, and I'm in sales, and they're like, I know a lot of Indian people. All of them are doctors, lawyers, or engineers. And I literally had this conversation with my neighbor. She's this older woman, and she was like, okay, that is very much not the norm. And she actually was very interested, and it opened her mind up a little bit. Now she's very stuck in her ways, but it was still good to understand that. And sometimes you're going to have to fight, and you're going to get nowhere because people are stuck in their ways. But at least you can walk away knowing that you tried. So my best thing in life is this. My best advice to this situation is this. Take the judgments that are good and be very, very conscious of them. Be very understanding that you have good things working for you. And then take the judgments that are bad and just outperform them. Outdo them. Don't sit there and be handcuffed and imprisoned by this judgment that someone's casting upon you. Because the reality is they probably just don't know you well enough. Or worst case scenario, they're right. They're actually 100% right. And there is a stereotype and you fit into it, and maybe you have to break out of it if it's a bad one, or maybe you have to stay in it if it's a good one. So the choice is yours. Everything that you want in life, you can make it whatever you want, regardless of people's opinions. And yeah, there are certain situations where I've been held back from certain things because of certain characteristics about myself. I'm not the tallest guy. I'm not 6 foot. And a lot of times people didn't pick me on teams when I was younger for basketball and stuff like that, not realizing that I'm pretty decent. I can move the ball a little bit. And, I got put on a team. I got picked last. I got in a situation that wasn't so good because of that. There are many situations where I wanted to talk to a girl and she was taller than me. And maybe not by much, but I didn't get that opportunity. I didn't even get the look, even though I felt in my head we would have been great because she had a preconceived notion. Now, mind you, I've dated women that are taller than me. A lot of the girls I've dated are taller than me. And it's like we had great relationships because they got that conversation with me. But some girls just won't even give you the chance, especially in the social media world that we live in today. It's very cutthroat. If she looks at you in 2 seconds, she's going to decide, I like him, I don't like him, I'm not going to reply, I'm going to reply. So yeah, sometimes it's just unfortunate. And so you've got to just be better. You've got to be the best version of yourself that you can. I am not the most physically attractive guy from my objective sense. So I have to work on myself. I have to be in shape. I have to have an attractive life. I have to have a lot of respect around me and the people that I carry around me and the people that are associated with me. I have to, do well financially, emotionally, mentally. So I've come a long way, and I've, compensated in other areas because some of those stereotypes and those judgments hold me back. But overall, I still outperform the general market share that sits there and says, this is unfair. There's a lot of guys I know that are short. They're like, oh, she'll never even date me or look at me because I'm shorter than her. I got to find a girl that's shorter than me. It's like, no, dude, you don't have to do that. What are you talking about? You don't have to. There's many girls that'll say, oh, he'll never talk to me or give me a chance because, I'm just not pretty enough. That's not true. It's not true. Yeah, looks matter. But there are many girls I have met that are actually objectively very beautiful, and I talk to them and they open their mouth and they're just brain dead. I'm like, ugh, never. And there's a lot of girls I met that are they're not the most objectively attractive, I'll be honest, but their personalities are beautiful. And they have a lot of good things about them. They care about their family. They're religious. They're kind. They're conservative. And I'm like, wow, you just went from someone that was like, I wouldn't really take too much time staring at in the street to someone that I could just sit here and talk to for hours and hours and hours and potentially even have a family with because you're such an amazing person in your heart, So, I mean, when I say don't judge people, what I mean by this is that get to know someone and create a better judgment of them because you're going to have a judgment regardless. When you see someone, you're instantly forming a judgment that's not that deep and that's not that grounded in empirical data. But when you get to know someone every day, every minute, every second, you're learning more about them and you can create a more concrete, organized opinion of someone, which I think that you don't really know somebody unless you've known them for 10 years. But in 6 months, people can completely change. So if you know someone for 10 years and then 6 months go by, they could be a completely different person. I really do believe in the ability that people can change in a lot of different ways if they apply themselves. So understand, You have to overcome judgments by becoming better. And you have to realize that everyone is judging everyone. I hope this video was helpful. I hope this brought you a little bit of clarity in your day. If you guys haven't done so already, hit that bell notification on my YouTube to stay on top of all my videos. Subscribe to all my major platforms. If you ever want to talk to me, the link is in the bio to work with me one-on-one in coaching. And until next time, guys, Sumedh out.